So it all really started with a sound. Just a simple pulse coming from orbit. But that one sound, it kicked off what might be the single greatest technological race in all of human history. Let me take you back to October 4th, 1957. This little signal broadcasting from way up there, like 580 kilometers above the Earth, it just changed everything. It was the starting gun for the space race, and believe me, the whole world was listening. And that sound? Yeah, that was Sputnik 1, the very first artificial satellite, and it was launched by the Soviet Union. I mean, it was basically just a polished metal ball with some antennas. It didn't do a whole lot. But the fact that it was up there, that was a massive shock to the system for the entire world, but especially for the United States. So the race was on, and right out of the gate, the Soviet Union just took this unbelievable, immediate lead. It left the West totally scrambling just to try and catch up. You really have to put yourself in that mindset, the kind of fear that just gripped America. For them, the logic was terrifyingly simple, right? If the Soviets can put a satellite over, say, Nebraska, well, they can put a nuclear warhead there too. This wasn't about science or exploration, not at first. This was about survival. And America's first attempt to respond? Well, it was a total disaster. The Vanguard rocket, this was supposed to be their big, swift reply. It just blew up on the launch pad. On live TV. I mean, can you imagine? It got the humiliating nickname Flopnik. And while that was happening, the Soviets were just ticking off one major achievement after another. And the list of Soviet firsts just kept on growing. In '57, they sent the dog Laika into orbit. 4 years later, in 1961, Yuri Gagarin becomes the first human to ever see the Earth from space. Then, just 2 years after that, Valentina Tereshchova becomes the first woman. I mean, in just a handful of years, the USSR had built this absolutely dominant, undeniable lead. So the United States takes a look at the scoreboard and realizes, okay, we can't win this race the way it's being run right now. So what do? They do something incredibly audacious. They basically change the finish line. They move it to a place so far away, so seemingly impossible, that it would reset the entire competition. And this came just weeks after America's first astronaut barely even got into space. President Kennedy stands up before Congress and makes this incredible promise. But here's the really interesting part, the motivation behind it all. This wasn't just about science. It was a desperate political need for a big Cold War win, especially after the humiliation of the Bay of Pigs. Suddenly, the moon wasn't just a rock in the sky. It was the ultimate prize. Okay, so NASA gets to work and comes up with this methodical 3-step plan. Step 1, Project Mercury. That was all about just, can humans even survive up there? Step 2, Project Gemini. This was the all-important practice round. And then step 3, Project Apollo. Well, Apollo was all about winning. People often forget about Gemini, but it was absolutely vital. Think of it like the bridge to the moon. This is where NASA figured out all the complicated dance moves they needed for a lunar mission. How to do a spacewalk, how to dock 2 spacecraft together in orbit, and critically, how to keep astronauts alive and well for weeks on end. And look, to get to the moon, you need raw power, pure brute force. So America built the Saturn V, which is still the most powerful machine humans have ever created. And just to give you a sense of what that means, that number, 15 tons, that's how much fuel it burned every single second, just at liftoff. It's just mind-boggling. All right, so the tech is in place, the skills have been mastered, the United States is now ready for its final push to the moon. This is it, the climax of the entire space race. But here's a crucial twist. Just as the American program was hitting its stride, the Soviet effort was literally falling apart. Their chief designer, this brilliant guy named Sergei Korolev, he was basically their version of Wernher von Braun. He died suddenly. And then their own massive moon rocket, the N1, just kept exploding. It was this series of terrible, catastrophic failures that really opened the door for America. And then it happened. July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin guide their lunar module, the Eagle, down to the surface of the moon, onto the Sea of Tranquility. And Armstrong's famous words, well, they were the signal that the U.S. had finally, definitively crossed the finish line. And you just can't overstate the global impact of that moment. It was staggering. We're talking an estimated 600 million people. That's about a fifth of the entire planet's population back then. glued to their TVs, watching this grainy black and white footage live. It really felt like, for just a few hours, the entire Cold War just paused. But here's the thing. The end of the race, that wasn't the end of the story. Not at all. It was actually the beginning of a whole new chapter, one that would have seemed completely impossible just a decade before. So get this. In 1975, the two great rivals finally meet. In orbit. It was called the Apollo-Soyuz Test Project, and it was the very first joint international space mission. This was a deliberate act of diplomacy. Its whole purpose was to formally end the competition. And the whole thing really comes down to this one moment. You have the American commander, Tom Stafford, and the Soviet commander, Alexei Leonov, and they shake hands through the open hatch between their spacecraft. This was so much more than just a greeting. It was this incredibly powerful symbol that the space race was officially over, and it's what paved the way for future collaborations like the International Space Station we have today. Okay, so let's fast forward. We're going to jump all the way to today, to 2026, because guess what? The race is back on. But this time, the players, the goals, the rules, everything has changed dramatically. And you can see right here just how different it is. I mean, the players, it's not just the USA versus the USSR anymore. Now you've got a whole mix of national agencies like China's and these huge private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin. And the goal? It's not about proving an ideology's better. It's about economics, and for a lot of people, it's about the long-term survival of our species. And access? Well, that's shifting from just a few elite astronauts to a future with tourists and actual industry in orbit. I mean, just think about the scale of the change. Back in 1957, one single satellite was a world-changing miracle. Today, in 2026, we kind of just take it for granted that there are over 8,000 Starlink satellites up there giving us global internet. Space has gone from being a stage for political drama to being a piece of essential global infrastructure. But maybe the most profound thing to come out of that first race wasn't the flag on the moon. Maybe it was the perspective it gave all of us back here on Earth. When you see a photo like the Blue Marble, which was taken by the Apollo 17 crew, it was the first time we really saw our planet for what it is. This single, incredibly fragile, borderless home, just floating in the darkness. And that kind of leaves us with this final thought to chew on. The first space race, it was born out of fear, right? But it led to this incredible expansion of human knowledge. The race today, well, we're not just trying to prove which political system is better. We're racing to see if humanity can actually become a multi-planetary species. So it makes you wonder, was that landing back in 1969 the end of a war? Or was it just the very beginning of our real story?